Before her name became a warning whispered in fear, before her hair writhed with living serpents and her eyes turned men to stone, Medusa was a mortal woman of rare beauty and gentle spirit. She was born among the Gorgons, yet unlike her immortal sisters Stheno and Euryale, she was fully human. Her beauty was unmatched, her hair shimmering like polished bronze beneath the sun, her eyes bright as emerald waters, and her voice soft as the wind through spring leaves. From her youth, she was devoted to Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, and served as a priestess in the goddess's temple. Her days were spent tending the sacred fires, weaving garments for offerings, and guiding the faithful in prayer. She had taken vows of chastity, humility, and service, and she kept them with quiet devotion. The temple of Athena rose high above the city on its marble foundation, its great columns gleaming white in the sunlight. It was a place of solemn silence and sacred duty, a sanctuary where only the pure of heart could serve. Medusa's beauty drew the admiration of many who came to the temple, though she never sought such attention. Her life was dedicated to the goddess, and she carried herself with modesty and grace. Yet beauty in the world of gods and mortals was a dangerous gift, and it caught the eyes of beings far beyond mortal reach. One such gaze belonged to Poseidon, god of the sea, vast and powerful in his unbounded. He was stirred by Medusa's beauty. To him, she was not simply a mortal woman, but a treasure to be claimed. His desire grew until one day, when the sun hung low and the temple lay empty save for Medusa arranging fresh offerings on the altar, he appeared before her. His form was radiant with the deep colors of the ocean, his eyes dark as the depths beneath the snow. Medusa stepped back in fear and reverence, for she knew she stood before an Olympian, but she also knew the sanctity of the place and reminded him of her vows to Athena. Her words did not sway him. Whether through seduction or force, the meeting between them shattered the sacred laws of the temple. The marble halls that had known only prayer and incense became the site of an act that could not be undone. When Athena learned what had happened, her wrath blazed like a cold, cutting wind. The goddess of wisdom would suffer no defilement of her temple, yet she did not turn her fury against Poseidon. For the gods were bound in a web of ancient rivalries and unspoken pacts. To strike at one of her own rank would risk conflict that could tear the heavens. Instead, Athena's punishment fell upon Medusa. Medusa pleaded her innocence, her voice trembling as she swore that she had never betrayed her vows willingly. But Athena was unmoved, declaring that it was Medusa's beauty that had brought this disgrace into her sanctuary. The gift that had once brought admiration would now become a curse so terrible that no man could look upon her without paying the price. With a single command, Athena transformed her. Medusa's silken hair twisted into a nest of venomous serpents, their scales glinting and tongues flickering. Her eyes, once warm, became unblinking pools of power, capable of turning any living creature to stone. Her skin took on a pale, hardened hue, and her voice carried a hiss that echoed through the cold marble halls. Cast out from the temple, Medusa fled the city in despair. She wandered across barren plains and jagged shores until she reached a desolate island, far from the touch of mortals. There she made her home in dark caves, her only companions the stone figures of those unfortunate enough to cross her path. At first she wept for each new statue, knowing they had looked upon her by chance and been doomed by her gaze. In time, her grief hardened into caution. The statues became her warnings to those who would seek her out, whether for glory or greed. Tales of the cursed woman spread quickly across Greece. Sailors whispered of her in the dim light of taverns, describing a monster whose face no man could see and live. Some said she was born a creature of chaos, others that she was a woman wronged by gods who punished her for her beauty. Among kings and warriors, her name became a challenge. It was said that her head, even after death, would hold the power to turn enemies to stone. Many tried to find her, and all who did became lifeless sentinels on her island. One such tale reached King Poseidon of Seriphos, who sought to rid himself of the young hero Perseus. Pretending to desire Medusa's head as a wedding gift, he commanded Perseus to fetch it, certain that the quest would end in the next step. Perseus prayed for aid, and the gods answered. Athena herself, perhaps out of a wish to control Medusa's power, or perhaps out of guilt, gave him a polished bronze shield that could reflect like a mirror. Hermes gave him a curved sword sharp enough to slice stone, as well as winged sandals to carry him through the air. Following the guidance of the Gree, the three ancient sisters who shared a single eye and tooth, Perseus learned the way to Medusa's lair. He flew over wild seas and rocky cliffs until he reached the silent island. Statues stood scattered across the shore, warriors poised for battle, hunters caught mid-step, beasts frozen mid-roar. Each bore the same look of sudden terror. In the cool darkness of the cavern, Medusa slept. Her serpents coiled loosely, their tongues flicking lazily in the air. Even in her monstrous form, there remained a haunting trace of the beauty she had once possessed, a reminder of the woman who had served Athena. Perseus moved toward her with silent steps, using the shield to watch her reflection. The polished bronze showed the slow rise and fall of her breath, the slight stir of a serpent. He raised the sword, and in that instant, her eyes opened. The serpent's head struck the air, but the hero did not falter. Guided by the mirrored image, he struck once, and the blade found its mark. From the wound sprang Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysaor, a warrior of great stature, both born of Medusa's union with Poseidon. Perseus quickly placed her head in a sack, for its gaze retained its deadly power even in death. The serpents writhed, the mouth hissed, and the eyes still glowed with the force of Athena's curse. Medusa's immortal sisters awoke to the sound of her death cry and pursued Perseus, but he escaped into the sky, carried by Hermes' sandals. Returning to Seriphos, Perseus found Polydex threatening his mother Danae. Without hesitation, he drew Medusa's head from its sack, and in an instant the king and his men became stone. The hero later gave the head to Athena, who set it upon her shield, the Aegis. In battle, its sight could scatter armies, freezing them in place before the goddess's spear struck. To mortals, it became a symbol of divine power and protection, but to those who remembered the story, it was also a relic of tragedy. The woman who had once served Athena now adorned her armor, her power bound to the will of the goddess who had cursed her. Medusa's tale was told in many ways. Some poets and storytellers made her the villain, a monster slain by a brave hero. Others saw her as a victim of divine injustice, punished for the desires of a god she could not resist or escape. For those who looked deeper, her fate was a mirror of mortal life in a world ruled by the capricious wills of the immortals. Beauty could be both gift and curse, devotion could be met with cruelty, and the innocent could be condemned while the powerful went unscathed. On her island, in the silence between the cries of seabirds, the wind would still sometimes whistle through the stone figures that stood as reminders of her life. Perhaps in those final years before Perseus came, she thought of the temple's cool marble, the soft light of morning, and the vows she had once held sacred. Perhaps she remembered her sisters, her laughter, and the mortal life that had been taken from her. Whether she carried hatred for Athena or resignation to her fate, only she would have known. In the end, Medusa's name lived on longer than that of the kings who feared her or the warriors who sought her head. Her image was carved into shields, painted on pottery, and told in stories passed from hearth to hearth. Some feared her still, some pitied her, but all remembered. And in that remembrance, her story endured a story of beauty turned to power, of innocence turned to curse, and of a mortal woman who became, by the will of gods, a figure both feared and immortal in legend.